as you know, I write a series of books called Gilda Joyce, Psychic Investigator. And how many of you have read at least one of these books? Because I know that most of you have read, some of you have read all of them. Most of you have read one. So I'm impressed because I didn't think that so many people would. And so you know a little bit about Gilda, and I want to answer all the questions you have. You can ask me anything, and the moms might have questions too. I do want to tell you that these books are great for mother-daughter book clubs. They're a wonderful opportunity to have an interesting conversation about novels that are written for young readers, but I actually have a fair number of adult readers too, and the subjects they deal with are serious enough in some cases that they're a really great source of conversation between adults and kids. So that's something that might be fun if there are ever mother-daughter book clubs, or if your mom wants to read it with you. That's always that's sometimes something you want, sometimes not. I don't know. But it can be interesting because the moms focus on different things than the kids do. So most of you know already that Gilda is an investigator. She investigates mysteries. And in the first book in the series, Gilda Joyce, Psychic Investigator, she is 13 years old. And in each book she gets a little bit older. And part of what makes Gilda so much fun for me to write, the reason I love writing about her, and I've continued this series, is because she herself is a writer. And she's very expressive with language. She's a very unique person. She's very witty. She's very humorous. And she has kind of an interesting perspective on life. And she's an observer of people. So she every time she writes a letter, that's some of the most fun writing for me in the book. And Gilda has a typewriter, which I brought here, and some of you got a chance to try out the old-fashioned manual typewriter. And part of what makes Gilda kind of unique is that she likes to do her writing on this old typewriter because it was a gift from her dad. When she was younger, her dad died, and so she misses him. And those of you who read the books know that. And she writes letters to her dad on this old typewriter, and she feels like the typewriter is almost kind of magic in some way. So she types these letters to her dad, and then she wishes she could still talk to him. And then she gets interested in becoming a psychic, like reading people's minds, investigating haunted houses and things like that. And she finds a book at a garage sale. It's not exactly like this book, but this is actually a directory of haunted places that are supposed to be haunted in the United States. And it's kind of fun for me to look at and think of ideas for places to set my stories. Gilda has a book called The Master Psychic's Handbook. And she uses that book to learn how an ordinary person can learn to become a psychic. And so she's the kind of girl who thinks if she just works and studies hard enough, she actually could teach herself how to do things like read somebody's mind, or be able to see a ghost, or communicate with spirits and things like that. So she is very curious about learning to become a psychic. And as she gets older, she actually does develop some skills, and she uses regular detective methods to solve her mysteries, but she also develops this intuition. She has this kind of sixth sense that she develops over time. The other thing that's really fun about this series for me is that each of the books is set in kind of an interesting location. So the first book in the series, Gilda Joyce, Psychic Investigator, Gilda is growing up in Michigan. She lives in the Detroit area. I grew up in Michigan, so I know this area pretty well. And she travels to visit a distant cousin of hers who lives in San Francisco, California. And when Gilda gets there, Gilda finds out that her cousin Juliet lives in a huge mansion. And does anyone remember what happens in the mansion? It's sort of, part of it's all boarded up, and nobody can enter or leave it, but they keep hearing sounds from part of the house. They have a mystery to solve. Gilda and Juliet, do they like each other at first? No, they're opposites. They can't stand each other, and they're stuck in this house for the summer. So part of it's a story about how these two girls who are opposite each other develop a friendship and kind of solve a mystery. But the setting of Michigan, where I grew up, and traveling to California, where I worked for a couple years, sort of inspired part of that book, and the setting of being in San Francisco.